This podcast is not for the overly sensitive, the terminally optimistic, or anyone who thinks dating in your 50s is a whimsical romantic comedy. Listener discretion is advised.
More straight talk with Trent on Girls Can Tell.
I didn't think this would make it to 10 episodes. That's the honest truth. When I started this show, I had a concept, a microphone, and a general sense that I had things worth saying. But what I didn't have was any real confidence that anyone would listen, even though I'd been on the radio for 32 years, or that I'd still be doing this a year later. 50 episodes in, I am. And this one is different. I'm not here to teach you something today or make a case for a position or walk you through some weird human behavior. No argument to build, no point to make. It's just me talking to you directly. So here's what a year of this actually looked like. Doing a podcast by yourself is hard in a way that's almost impossible to explain unless you've tried it. I came from doing radio with a partner. When you have someone across from you, they carry half the weight without even trying. The silence gets filled, and even if it doesn't, there's someone sitting there in the room next to you with a presence. The energy sustains. If you lose the thought for a second, somebody else picks it up. That's how most shows work, and most people who've never done it assume that's just how a show goes. Solo is a completely different discipline. When you sit down to record alone, there's no one to react to what you're saying, no feedback in real time, no laugh, no raised eyebrow, no, wait, what do you mean by that? To redirect you when you're going somewhere that isn't working. You're performing a conversation with people who aren't in the room, and you have to make it feel natural anyway. And before you even get to recording, you've written the thing, rewritten it, and edited it, and then recorded it, produced it, and spent the rest of the week promoting it across every platform with daily content while watching the analytics to figure out what's working and what isn't. Every week, without missing one. There were weeks this past year where I was recording from a hotel room and living out of a suitcase with a dog because my apartment had become genuinely uninhabitable. It intensely affected me and my dog Holly physically. The management company knew and did nothing, and I was dealing with all of that while sitting down every week to make this show. I'm telling you that because when I say I never missed a week no matter what, I want you to understand what no matter what actually covered. It covered that, and it covered worse weeks than I'll ever describe on this show. You don't care what's happening in my personal life. You care that the episode is there when you show up for it. And I didn't want to be the guy who uses his circumstances as an excuse to go quiet on his audience. So I didn't. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, understand that consistency is the whole game. You miss a week and people move on. There's too many other options and too little time, and your audience will not wait for you. You have to want it enough to show up when you don't feel like it, especially then. Now, I started this show with opinions, strong ones, rules I'd developed, frameworks I'd believed in, lines I wasn't willing to cross, and some of those still hold. But a year and 50 episodes in, I can tell you that I've been wrong about things I was confident about. I came into this convinced that certain patterns in people were disqualifying, no exceptions. I'd been cheated on. I'd watched someone I trusted make sustained, deliberate choices to deceive me over an extended period of time. And in the aftermath of that, I drew some hard lines about certain types of people in certain situations with specific occupations, and I held those lines firmly, and we talked about them on this show like they were settled facts. They weren't. The truth is more complicated than that. Good people do bad things, bad people occasionally do good things, and the work of actually figuring out which one's sitting across from you is harder than looking at their last action and drawing a conclusion from it. I know that intellectually, but I wasn't always applying it. I've softened on some of those rules in the past few months. Not abandoned them, but softened them. There's a difference between a pattern and a category, and I was sometimes treating categories like patterns. That's not fair to the individual in front of you, and it's not good analysis either. That's growth, I think, or at least I'm calling it that. 3 questions come up constantly. Does this stuff actually happen to you? Yes, all of it. I don't manufacture materials, the stories are real, the situations are real, the details I share are as accurate as I can make them. This show has always been about honesty, and I'm not about to undermine that by fabricating experiences for content. Did the woman who cheated on you ever contact you again after the podcast started? She did, multiple times. She heard the episodes. She called and left a voicemail. I didn't pick up. The message was something along the lines of finding it funny, not in the way I might mean funny, but in the way that was clearly designed to get a call back. She didn't get one. She reached out several more times after that. The last message I ever received from her was something I genuinely was not prepared for. She laid out her version of the relationship, unprovoked. What she thought happened, how it went, and what I supposedly did or didn't do. And it was so disconnected from reality that I couldn't even respond to it. Out of the recognition that someone who has rewritten a shared history that completely isn't going to be reached by anything I say. There's no version of my response that improves that situation, so I didn't give it one. I went quiet, and I stayed quiet. The last contact was months ago now, and I consider that chapter genuinely closed. Are you dating anyone, and what happens to the show if you are? No, not in the exclusive sense. I'm talking to people. Nothing has become what I'd call dating yet. As for the show, it continues either way. If I'm with someone and they're comfortable with it, our experience becomes material, and if they're not, I find other angles. The show doesn't stop because my personal life changes. If anything, an actual relationship gives this show more to work with, not less. And I'd be honest about it on air, too. Some of you have also asked about the woman from early in the podcast who posted private dating app conversations on a flight attendant Facebook group trying to shame me. She turned out to be married to someone dealing with serious health issues with kids at home. People suggested a lot of things I could have done in response. I did none of them. I could, and many of you thought I should have, but I looked at the situation and decided that the right move was to walk away from it completely. I didn't want to blow up a marriage or derail a career or get into a back and forth that would have never actually ended cleanly. Revenge doesn't land the way you expect it to. It's never as satisfying as you build it up to be, and it just creates another loop that goes nowhere good for anyone involved. So I let it go. That was new for me. Whether she's still out there doing this to other people is genuinely not my business anymore. I'll be straight with you about this. The analytics matter. Watching the numbers grow, seeing which episodes land and which don't, understanding what the audience responds to, that's useful information and I pay attention to it. But what keeps me doing this is the messages. People who found this show during a breakup and said it helped them make sense of what happened. People who changed how they approach dating because of something they heard here. People who cried. People who told me they've been holding in something for years and finally felt like someone was saying it out loud and they weren't alone out there. I'll be honest. I didn't think that would affect me that much when it happened. I was going to do this show regardless of the reception, and I told myself the response wouldn't change my investment in it. I was wrong about that, too. When a real person tells you that something you said in your apartment alone on a Tuesday night actually moved them and actually helped them, the numbers on a spreadsheet stop being the point. That's where it becomes real. That's what makes the weeks where you have nothing left in you and you sit down and do it anyway worth it. I didn't start this to change anyone's life, but apparently that's sometimes what happens, and I'm not going to pretend it doesn't mean something to me. It means everything. Here's the irony I might as well admit. I do a podcast about dating. I've put out 50 episodes about how people connect, why they fail at it, and what they're doing wrong, and what they could do better. People message me asking for advice. Strangers have told me the show changed how they approach relationships. And I have not been on a single date in a year. I want you to think about that for a second, because I think it's important and also a little funny if you look at it from the right angle. The apps are exhausting in a way that's hard to fully articulate if you haven't been in them recently. Most people aren't there to find someone. They're there to feel wanted. They're scrolling, looking for a person who checks every box simultaneously. And the moment you fall short of any one of them, they've already moved on to the next profile. And I do it too. I'm not exempt from this. I've passed on people who probably deserve more of a chance because something didn't feel exactly right, and I told myself I had standards when maybe I just had indifference. What I know after a year is that I'm more tired of the process than I was when I started, and I'm still not done. Somewhere out there is a person who's done enough actual work on themselves to show up for something real without running from it the moment it gets complicated. Somewhere out there is someone like me who's honest and genuinely looking for a real relationship. I'm looking for that person. I just hope we find each other before we both get too worn down by the process to keep trying. This podcast used to be something I kept quiet about when I was talking to someone new. I didn't want them to think I was dating for material or stumble onto an episode and hear something that scared them off before we even met. I flipped completely on that. If someone hears this show before we've met and still wants to meet, that's important information. It means they know how I think, what I value, what I've been through, and they're not afraid. That's a better starting point than two strangers having coffee with no context. The podcast is a filter now, and a good one. Anyone scared off by it probably would have been scared off eventually anyway. Better to find that out now before anyone's invested. 50 episodes in, this show is the most accurate picture of who I am that exists anywhere. If you've been listening, you know me better than most people who've met me in person. And that's a strange thing to think about. But after a year of doing this, after all the hotel rooms, the bad weeks, and the messages that made it worth it, I think I'm okay with that. I think it's actually the point. Thanks for being here for all of it. I'll see you next week.